Hello everyone, welcome to the constructor.org. In my experience in the construction industry, I have found that the most experienced project managers can draw on their technical toolkit very well. However, where project managers seem to have the most difficulties around the relationship or behavioral side of team performance. It's true and I have witnessed it. In the popular business book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, four of the five dysfunctions are behavioral. The Knowledge Team Effectiveness Profile statistically identified 17 discriminators of team effectiveness by comparing highly effective teams to less effective teams. The top 7 discriminators again were related to behavior. The Agile Alliance, the hub of agile software development, identified 4 key values. 3 of the 4 are related to behavior. These are 3 diverse sources. They all say the same thing. Behavior is the key. Today we have with us an illustrious guest, Ms. Soumi Rai, who is going to help us understand the behavioral attributes of a construction manager that ultimately leads to effective leadership. Given the lengthy list of achievements, it would be great, ma'am, if you could introduce yourself to our viewers.
Good evening, Akshat. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to interact with your viewers. I have about 20 years of work experience now, and of which 7 years I have spent in various assignments, and most of it in a consulting area. So it's been a lot of learning in HR consulting domain, and thereafter it's been in the academic sector. So from the time I entered the academic sector, it has always been my endeavor to bring in my knowledge from the corporate sector and for better applications and understanding in the academic sector. So now with over almost 12, 13 years of experience in the academic sector and having worked with various institutions like even Symbiosis Institute of International Business, before now being associated with MICMAR as an associate professor in the HR and organizational behavior domain. I have worked on various research areas related to gender, generational areas, mostly from the point of view of behavioral aspects. And my research has been published in quite a few international journals, and I've worked on quite a few international forums and continue to be associated. There's a lot of things in the pipeline going on. And recently, we have come out with even a book called as The Practical Aspects of HRM related to the construction sector, which actually covers a lot of real life cases related to the construction sector. Because we always felt that while there was a lot of focus on the technical part, me and my colleague, Dr. Lele, who is being my collaborator on this research work, we felt that there was very less focus on the management of human resources and less focus on the behavioral areas. And that's why we felt that we could highlight some of those issues and challenges and how they could be more practically dealt with. So from that point of view, I come across and I hope some of my contributions will help your leaders understand, help your viewers basically understand their challenges and take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Let's begin with understanding the difference between a leader and manager or leadership and management. Is it a slight lack or addition of that behavioral aspect that changes everything? What exactly is the difference?
Okay. Before we start discussing about leadership and management, it's important for me to give a little background to your viewers who have not had introduction to management per se. I assume that would be the case. So, see, management as a discipline evolved somewhere after your industrial era, and mostly management developed as a compliance aspect. So there was a job that needed to be done, and a job needed a set of procedures or practices to be followed. And you needed people who could plan, organize, bring the resources together, and execute the work. And thus, management evolved as a discipline to be able to bring in that compliance so that there could be an effective planning, there could be an effective organizing of the resources, then bringing these people together, and also some control and evaluation. However, when you talk of leadership, the entire outlook changes. Leadership basically comes from the point of influence, right? Leaders are never people who would coerce people to do a particular kind of a work. Coercion is used more in management. So managers using their position power can get a particular kind of work done because managers have been given the power that says if you do this work, I will reward you, and if you don't do this work, then I can punish you. However, when we talk of true leadership, then in the context of true leadership, what happens is leaders really do not need to force people to do a particular kind of work. Take any example, whether we are talking of political leaders or whether we are talking of business leaders. If I take political leaders, for an example, if I take some of the greatest political leaders this world has produced, like if you talk of Mahatma Gandhi or even Nelson Mandela or present our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, if you look at them, these are people who are setting, they're like trailblazers. They're setting the example and people are influenced by them and people follow them, not because they're forced to do it. Whether you talk of Gandhi or Mandela, they were not people who were forcing others to join the movement. It is because people build a confidence and trust in these people and they were influenced by these people. Similarly, if we talk of quite a few business leaders, whether we are talking of Mr. Ratan Tata, whether we are talking of Mr. Mukesh Ambani, it is their sheer energy, it is their sheer passion towards the work they are doing, it is their, their outlook, their vision, which is influencing people to go along with them. Because here is somebody who has a vision, who can see the broader picture, who is able to, show that picture to the followers and tell the followers, look, this is the vision, and I know that we can achieve it together. And that trust, which they show that in their own capabilities and in the capabilities of the followers, motivate the followers to move along with them. But the problem with management, I'm not saying that management and leadership being different either are not required. We are just trying to understand the difference. So from that point, if you look at managers sometimes lack vision. They have a very short-term focus. They are more focused on the immediate task on hand. And that's very good in terms of execution and operation. But as you climb the ladders and as you are required to have a more broader perspective, it is where leadership qualities are more required compared to only the limited perspective which the manager has. So in brief, that is where you can say leadership and management. Now, when you're talking of behavioral aspects, see that's what I said, that when you're talking of leadership, leaders have the ability to understand the needs of people. They can in-depth understand what is it that people are really interested in, what is it that people really need. And this understanding is what drives the leader to do something better, not just for himself or herself, but for the community at large or for the organization at large. So yes, the behavioral aspect becomes extremely important when you come to leadership.
Okay. The next question that comes in row is, how do you think a construction manager is any different from the managers in any other field?
Okay. Now, when we are talking of construction management, while we were doing this research work on construction sector and the allied work I have done, most of the time that we have found in the construction sector is that the sector is extremely conventional, very traditional. Okay,
Yes.
and since this is a brick and mortar industry, the challenges of this industry are quite different from what you would call as other industries. So, for example, if I compare the construction industry with the services industry, whether it is IT or telecom, there is a certain level of stability, or whether you are talking of IT services, they know the kind of clients they are dealing with, they know the processes that they have to use, they know the kind of, equipment they will be needing. But in the construction sector, everything is quite dynamic. And everything is based a lot on the availability of resources and also to an extent depending on legal parameters like permissions and approvals being given, environmental clearances. Then there are factors like environmental conditions, whether it will be the weather conditions where you are operating. Plus, it's a hugely manpower intensive industry. Then there are land acquisition costs. So if you see, all this creates a different kind of a dynamic for the construction sector in relation to then the construction manager. Now, a manager who's operating in this sector, he does not have an idea that tomorrow the conditions will be similar to what is today. right? Because in a manufacturing, you can predict that if the particular shop floor is working, tomorrow also there is some kind of a predictability that will be there at that particular level of the manufacturing unit. But for the construction manager, there could be some other things thrown into the mix, which could create a lot of uncertainty in the environment. That's why I'm calling it a very dynamic environment. Now, for the construction manager, the challenges are multifold. Compared to the other industries, they have to, they are like a, they're like a fulcrum in between different stakeholders. So, if it's a remote project we are talking about, maybe in some rural area, then there would be the villagers, the people who are giving the land where the project is happening. If I take an example of, let's say, an infrastructure project, okay, a road or a bridge or something is happening. So you are taking a land, you are kind of building it. So there are those stakeholders. Then there is the government, which is the stakeholder. Then you have different, contractual elements which are there. You have a list of contractual elements. You have the principal contractors, and then you have the subcontractors. So the number of stakeholders at one point in time a construction manager is handling is much, much higher than you would see in other industries. Plus, now add to this mix the uncertainty of the environment, the dynamic aspects of the environment, the availability of manpower, the financial costs that are involved. All this makes the job of the construction manager much difficult. So it's not just about the technical understanding or maybe just having a knowledge of the technical aspects of the job. The construction manager is required to have kind of a 360-degree perspective. He has to also deal with the behavioral perspective, which is not just the people working at the site, but maybe also the external stakeholders like the contractors or maybe the land, the people from whom they've taken the land, should they create some problem. They are there. Then you have the financial factors to be looked into, the logistics factors to be looked into. So the plate is literally quite full for the construction manager compared to other sectors who have probably a particular cut-out job to do, and the dynamic and uncertainty is much less. Yeah.
Uh, what does an ideal construction manager should look like, keeping aside his or her impeccable execution toolkit? What are the must-have traits that the construction manager must have?
See, I believe for any manager, we'll keep the construction manager aside. First of all, I would like to talk about this term where you said ideal construction manager. Now, when you say ideal, the word itself means that we are creating a perfect kind of a character. We are saying that a construction manager has to have XYZ kind of a thing, and then he can be classified as an ideal construction manager. Now, when you bound the, this construction manager, the so-called construction manager, by this ideal boundary, you are saying that the construction manager may not require something else, right? So I would not like to say that there is a term called as an ideal construction manager, because construction management per se is, as I said, a dynamic evolving domain. Every day at the project site or the construction site, the manager has to learn something new. And every day, probably the manager's viewpoints are challenged. They come with a particular viewpoint, they come with a particular perspective, and there could be circumstances and situations that challenge those viewpoints already, the existing viewpoints. So for the construction manager to evolve, one of the most important things which I feel uh, is that adaptability. Adaptability in the sense to be able to mold oneself according to the changing dynamics of the situation. Because for this particular manager, change is non-negotiable factor. Change is the only thing that is constant. Because they are working in a sector where every day there are different things which are coming up, right?
Yeah.
Now, if construction managers work with only a traditional, conventional mindset, that this is only the right way to do the work, then they have a problem with how they are going to approach the task. Because every time maybe there is some other issue that's coming up. I'll take an example. You all have heard about this Atal Tunnel project, right?
Yes,
Which
ma'am.
took
Yeah.
almost 10 years to complete, right? And it's a very famous project now. Recently, it was inaugurated in September end by our Honorable Prime Minister. Now, in this 10-year time period, apparently the challenges were multifold. All their traditional thought processes were challenged, specifically because we had this problem of a river which was, flowing besides that tunnel. And one of the major problems that they had was how to manage that water pressure. Because every time they were building something, the water was kind of coming in from different areas. So obviously, if you have a very, I would say, traditional mindset or a very rigid mindset that says this is only the process that has to be followed, how is it that you will find a solution? So adaptability is one of the key traits manager requires in any field, but for the construction manager, it's non-negotiable because you have to change according to the circumstances which are coming in front of you. If you stay rigid, you will not be able to find a solution. So it's not about just this Atal tunnel example. Another example which comes to my mind is the Sardar statue. I have
Mhm.
mentioned it previously also a lot of times. I mentioned this example because it was a very challenging project according to L&T. And one of the biggest challenge was how to ensure that statue upright and not fall down due to the wind velocity and the pressure of that place because it's near a seaport and the soil conditions are not very conducive for such a heavy statue. So they have to flip the entire book of theories probably, which people learn during engineering. That these are the processes, these are the standards. So given that particular situation, they had to find new solutions. That how can we, they played around with the weight, the iron, the structure to be able to ensure more stability to the statue. So that's a great example, and all the challenging projects that you see, all of them present examples which are very clear. Adaptability is the key to survival,
Okay, ma'am.
specifically for the construction manager. The next two things that I would like to talk about is drive and attitude. Yeah, so this is something let's take on as we go along. Yeah.
So basically, ma'am, the agility of the construction manager, how easily he adapts to different situation, how he refines his skill sets according to
Right.
different situation is very important. Okay, ma'am.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The next
Absolutely.
question that is in the row is how do we obtain the balance? The construction managers, given the rough conditions they work in, how do they obtain the balance between the technical side and the human side of the project performance? I mean, you need to be really mentally strong in construction. I mean, it does not really go through when you're not, mentally strong. And at the same time, you don't have to fall in that
Hmm.
emotional realm. You have to be consistently very strong.
Hmm. Correct. Correct. Uh, as I was saying, one of the most important things for a construction manager to be more effective at the job he is doing is attitude. And this is not just what I am saying, this is based on our discussion with quite a few real life project managers and construction managers whom we have met during our research work and when we were trying to understand a lot of things about the HR dynamics in this sector. One of the things that has come out consistently is the attitude with which people approach the work. That defines a lot of things because attitude is extremely important for what where we are calling of this motivation or we are talking of this drive and passion to do the work or how we are even adapting to a change process. Now when people who generally are the people, young people who join a particular site, if they come with an attitude that they are looking at a particular kind of, they have some kind of a picture in their mind and they join the organization thinking that this is what it should be and this is how things should work out, then it's very difficult for them to survive in the context of the environment which you are talking about. Because as you rightly said, you have to, have some kind of a balance in the sector. You cannot get into the sector expecting that it can be comparable to other sectors like the services or something. You have to come with an attitude that every day there is going to be a challenge and every day you will have to, be agile enough to learn different things. And even at times there is a possibility that probably a person who's working under you may not be as educated as you or may not be having those degrees from colleges and all, but that person has a sound knowledge of the practical realities, the ground reality of the work that they are doing. And they know their game and you have to listen to their advice. So construction manager requires at the most something which I call it a balanced approach. Almost like a parent, you have to have a neutral perspective, and a learning attitude. An attitude that says, whatever it is, I will absorb knowledge like a sponge. Whoever is giving the knowledge, it doesn't matter. Whether the knowledge is coming from my boss or whether it is coming from the supervisor or maybe even an old worker on the field, it doesn't matter. I should be able to understand which knowledge is going to really help me. When I say knowledge, I'm not saying the bookish knowledge, I'm saying the learnings that are happening at the field level, at the site level. So you to take that learning without letting that ego interfere in between and say that no, he's a worker. What does he know about the work? I'm an engineer. I come from a certain institute. I have a certain degree, and so I know better. What I have learned from people who are senior construction managers today and have been very successful in managing projects and site level work, all of them say that there is never an end to your process of learning. You're always learning when you're on the site. And every day there is a new challenge that comes. And if you are rigid, if you say that, no, I will do the work this way only, and you don't balance your outlook with the kind of approach, your consideration for the people who are supplying you this knowledge, they will bottle up. They will not share that knowledge with you, which they may know. And in the end, you may end up reworking the entire thing, which ultimately will lead obviously to cost escalation and project delays and all that kind of a thing. So sometimes it is those people who are not looking from your perspective, but they are looking from a very different perspective who may be able to give you a solution which you've never thought of. So attitude in terms of learning and the solution focused approach, that balance in terms of being considerate, listening to other people, their opinions, understanding them. There is somewhere a thought process which says being empathetic is not really welcome in the construction sector.
Yes.
A construction manager, if you want to say something on this, then I'll take it forward. So
No,
that's the
ma'am.
general outlook. I always struggle with it when I deal with construction engineers.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. I mean, when it comes to construction industry, it's very traditional in the way it works. The people are adamant, and soft skills are not really something that influence people. You have to deliver continuously, and you have to produce results. So that's totally true. So
Correct.
attitude.
I kind of, yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
about
yeah, continue.
it's attitude. You have to have the right attitude in order to balance the both the technical side and
Hmm,
the emotional side. Okay, ma'am.
absolutely. So as you were saying, this is a struggle I have always with the students, the engineers when they enter the institute. One of the reasons is because that's been the way of working for ages, right? And when that's the way of working for ages, the general human behavior is if something is working, why change it? Right? If something is working out for you, why would you change it? And that's exactly the system which has happened in construction sector. And even probably the workers and the laborers have got habituated to this kind of a process. But there are cases where you have consideration and empathy taking you more longer in terms of the benefits compared to the short-term benefits. So that's the difference which you see between a manager in the construction sector vis-a-vis a leader in the construction sector. A leader is not concentrated upon getting the work only done immediately. He's thinking from a long-term perspective in terms of loyalty, in terms of commitment. There are situations at times, where the challenges are extreme, it's very difficult and people are not really ready to put in effort. At times, that time only using a task-oriented style that this work has to be done may not work. That time may be a consideration saying that trust me, I will support you also. That kind of a thing has shown to show better results. I'll give an example here. Please bear with me. I know probably your leaders, your readers may not, viewers may not feel that so many examples are coming, but that's probably the lacuna with the teacher. They always give examples. So this example comes from a thesis student of mine who spoke about a site manager at Hyderabad. Now in this project, the workers were told to, they were done, a safety training was done and they were told to wear some safety gear. Now workers are not very comfortable with safety gears and there was less compliance. So the safety in charge, he had been using the task-oriented style, and he gave them a lot of reasons that you have to do this, and this is compliance. Basically, he was teaching. but it didn't kind of work out. Now the site manager was basically a woman, and she decided to take things in a different way. She met with these people, sat down with them, first spoke about their families, how things are going and all that. And then she spoke to them about their children, how they were doing and all that. And she kind of spoke to them that tomorrow if you don't wear safety gear and let's say an accident happens, both husband and wife are working, and mostly generally workers are like that. Couples work on the site. So our idea was that if both of you are working on the site and let's say an accident happens and both of you expire, then your children will be left orphans, maybe at the mercy of your relatives or begging on the streets and all that. And if you wear this, then this will be taken care of. So somewhere she went in depth to this need that they have, the need of security to take care of their children and their love for their children. And the next day onwards, there was almost a 90% compliance. Yes, there were a few people who were still not wearing it. It took some time for that to sink in, but there was almost a 90% compliance of wearing the safety equipment. So yes, there are rare cases where consideration has shown results, but since they are not very documented and there are probably very less number of cases, mostly there is an understanding that only task oriented and technical oriented style of work, right?
Yeah.
So, but my understanding is human dignity is human dignity. Even workers have human dignity, and they also have self-respect. So, consideration, yes, would be a good way to consider. Maybe it's a new approach, but worth trying.
The next question, ma'am, is what is the most desired skill that is required to become a successful project manager? As per your experience, again, examples are really welcome. They help us understand much better. So it would be helpful if you could give us some example.
Okay, I think drive, passion. If you're passionate about your game, nothing can stop you. If you are passionate and if you have an attitude that whatever the situation be, I will have a solution focused approach to kind of taking care of those issues. Whatever they be, you will always find a way. So that's why in English there's an adage that says where there's a will, there's a way. So basically, we are saying is if you're passionate about it. One of the issues that happen in the construction sector is since this sector is very challenging, there are few people you will find who are very passionate about this particular sector. However, a lot of people enter the sector who have taken up opportunities, but they are not very interested in working in this sector. And it is this lack of passion and the drive that they are having which is leading to an approach, an attitude that says that this is a burden, or how do I find a solution. They're always looking at things from a problem oriented approach, not from a solution oriented approach. But if you're passionate about something, let's say you're passionate about maybe biking, right? So even if you don't have a good bike, and even if you don't have those Harley Davidson and all that kind of bike, even if you have your old Hero Honda bike or something, and you're passionate about working, will it stop you from traveling long distances just because you don't have a Royal Enfield or a Harley Davidson? You will still do it because you're passionate about it. You are passionate about probably working for the construction sector. So you are working on all these particular areas. You are making the effort to learn different things because you are interested in it. So if one is passionate about the work that they do, if there is a drive, then you don't really require external motivation. Even if there are no external motivations that people are praising you, they are not praising you, or probably they are giving you a lot of rewards or accolades or not, you do the work because it gives you a certain sense of satisfaction. It gives you a certain sense of happiness. When you are able to accomplish a task, you feel good about it. So if there is drive and passion, a project manager does not look at the issues that come out on the project as problems. He looks at those from a different perspective. He looks at those as learning, that yes, this is something that is coming my way, and as I work through it, I learn and I grow. So the attitude totally changes. Instead of saying why this problem came up and why this headache I have now, you will instead look at it from saying, okay, this is something new to learn about. I don't know it, and so what can I do about it? And once you have done it, you can use it in other projects. So my singular point is passion, drive, along with attitude. These are three things which are non-negotiable when I say it comes to project effectiveness. And obviously, the leadership outlook, which is more of a solution focused outlook, and taking everybody together rather than being focused from a short-term perspective of only me, myself kind of a thing. And let me take an example here, since you said examples are good enough.
Sure.
Uh, See, when a manager, let's say there's a leakage in the wall, okay, and there's a hole from where water is coming out, a manager will probably think that, okay, there's a hole where this is coming out from, let me plug the hole, right? Now the leader will think that where is it exactly coming out from? What is the root cause of the problem? So the leader will try to analyze the root cause of the problem and probably trace that leakage to some internal plumbing issue or something and try to do a long-term solution for it, right? Because the leader knows that if I plug the hole now, there'll be another five holes that will come out in the wall at some other point in time. And then I will be spending my time and resources plugging different holes. And by the time I reach the fifth hole, maybe the first hole will open again.
Yeah.
So the problem with a lot of managers is this short-term perspective. They are more thinking about immediately how can I, solve the problem and not from a long-term perspective. But if I do this, what are the repercussions? And will it kind of bounce back in future if I don't tackle the root cause of the issue at the ground level itself?
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes, when there are labor strikes, a lot of managers try to solve the labor strike at that level itself. कि अभी के अभी solve हो गया. But the resentment remains. And then they come out with a larger group and they create a larger problem. So it requires dialogue, it requires solution focused approach, it requires going to the root cause. Why are they really upset? What is the problem? Until and unless you go to that solution focused approach, you cannot solve problems. So
I
yeah,
mean, this
maybe
great.
I've taken a little more time than you
It's fine.
were expecting.
I mean, this grave scenario. I mean, what would you advise the aspiring construction managers?
Could you please repeat the question, Akshay? There was a network problem. I couldn't hear your
I mean,
question
this
properly.
in this grave scenario where corona is everywhere, what would you advise the young
Mhm.
construction aspiring construction managers?
See, in this scenario, my understanding is there is a lot of learning that is happening. And this is a scenario actually should not be probably a risk scenario, but it should be as an opportunity. This scenario is actually giving you a lot of time, which would other ways not been available to you if you would be, attending the college full time or working full time. So people who are entering into the sector, this is a great opportunity for to learn this. There's so much knowledge which is available, which was previously not there in the 8 10 years back. When I say of an online, there are so many portals, there are so many, knowledge-based courses, case studies, even have, much video resources available, like a great project to talk about.
Hello.
Hi, Akshat, I'm sorry it got disconnected. I don't know from where it got. Yeah,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
let's kind of continue. Right, okay. Uh, So as I was saying, there is so much resources available. So
Yeah.
I believe this opportunity should be utilized to learn about a lot of things. Because as we started our discussion, I said a construction manager or a future construction manager does not only need technical knowledge. Technical knowledge is just part of your evolution. As you grow in your career, you will realize that since you are the whole source de facto in charge of your project site or your construction site, you have to have a lot of knowledge, whether it is about the behavioral aspects, the financial aspects, the logistics and all those aspects, everything you have to know about. So you are like your mini CEO, you can say. For your project side, you are like a mini CEO, a de facto CEO, although the terminology may not be there, the designation may not be there, but everything is on you because the people at the headquarters are sitting some way off and they are not really, concerned with the daily issues that you're facing. So this is a very good opportunity to learn about a lot of new technologies, a lot of new things which are coming up in this sector. And this is a great opportunity to maybe connect with people with work experience if possible, whether from your internship domain or maybe formally, informally, whatever methods are possible, and maybe actually engage in discussion with these people to understand some of the challenges they may have faced, learn from their experience. How did they go about solving those challenges? What did they do? See, at the initial stages, inquisitiveness is extremely important for a young manager. Uh, Inquisitive to know more, going to the background, saying why did this happen and what could have been done about it. The more inquisitive you are, the more you will learn. If you go with this approach that I already know technically everything, there's nothing more to learn, then it's very difficult. So I always see every situation as an opportunity. So while the situation externally may be great, but I believe it's an opportunity for you with the time that you have been given to learn a lot, focus a lot, and shape up to be the resource that a company would just want to pick like this. Be that diamond. You don't have to really hunt for something. You are the diamond, and the company will say, "Yeah, I need this diamond. Nothing done. I need him, non-negotiable." That is how it should be.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us and sharing your inputs. I hope this would help all the aspiring project managers in furthering their careers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Akshat, for giving me this opportunity. I hope I was not a lot of, very verbose kind of a thing, and maybe I didn't bore your listeners. But I hope that if there are any queries or something, uh, you will be able to forward them to me, and I will be able to help you out.